Hi, and welcome to the next video in the Falling into Winter Stitch tutorial. Before we start, I'd just like to say I encourage you to get the latest version of the pattern. There were a few errors in the last version and the last versions where at times I had mistakenly put a garter left increase at the end of the row where it should be a garter right. And it didn't happen all the time, but it happened in places where it would confuse you because you can't do a garter left increase at the end of the row. So just make sure you have the current version, which will be version 2, and that will be in the title. Again, it's available on Dropbox. Okay, let's get started with this pattern. Today we'll be looking at section 4, the star stitch, and this is the first stitch where it's really important to have the same number of stitches in each wedge before you start, and that number also needs to be odd. So I'm working on a sample that's smaller than your shawl. The technique's exactly the same. All that matters is I have the same number of odd stitches in both wedges. So looking at the start of the row, this wedge is called wedge 1. So from the start of the row, the first wedge, and then the second wedge, or wedge 2. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 stitches in wedge 1. So I write it in the box. We don't count the centre stitch, so we start for wedge 2. I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. Again, 15 stitches. If you've been following the pattern exactly from the beginning, you'll have 63 stitches in each wedge. But that number, you don't have to have 63. You can have more. I've got less. It's still going to work out. The important thing is that these numbers are the same and that they're the same odd number. If you don't have that situation, you can look at the correction section on page 18 and it will show you how to make the adjustments to get you ready to start the star stitch. So I have the same number of odd stitches in each wedge. So I start on set up row 1, which is just like a lot of the rows. We do our border stitches, our left increase, knit to the next marker, increases again and do the center stitch, and then knit to the end where we do another increase and knit 3. And then set up row 2 is again like many of the rows in the shawl, where we knit the border stitches, purl to the next marker, purl the center stitch, purl to the next marker and knit the other border stitches. So I'm just going to pause and I'll do that off camera, and then I'll come back when I've finished set up row 2. Okay, so I've finished set up rows 1 and 2. If you were working on your main shawl and started with 63 stitches in each wedge, you'll now have 65 stitches in each wedge. But I encourage you to count them just to make sure, because the number of stitches that we have in each wedge will determine which row we start working the pattern on. So I'm going to do a quick count again. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17 in wedge 1. We don't count the center stitch. So wedge 2, I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17. And while it might seem like a pain to count them again, it is very easy to miss one of these increases, either the ones at the end or the ones at the center. And even if you just miss, say, the last one, if I had have done that, I'd have 17 here and 16 here, and wedge 2 just won't work out. Okay, so we've established that I have 17 stitches in each wedge, and now I'm going to divide that count by 8. So I have my calculator here. Sorry, I had to turn the lights off because the ring light was shining on the screen. Nothing fancy about what we're doing here or the way we do it. Okay. So my instructions say to divide the wedge count by 8. So I have 17 stitches. So I type in 17 and I divide that by 8. And that gives me an answer of 2.125. Now I don't care what's in front of the decimal point. I'm just after the last 3 digits. And in my case, it's 0.125. And if we look at the list, it says 0.125. We work rows 1 to 8. Okay, let's suppose we had a different number. Say we had 21 stitches in each wedge. How would that work out? So we clear that. So I'm assuming I've got, say, 21 stitches in each wedge. I divide that by 8. And it gives me a result of 2.625. Now it's only the 625 that I'm interested in. Come back to our little list, and 0.625 says work rows 5 to 8, then rows 1 to 4. So whatever number you have, as long as it's the odd numbers, same ones in each wedge, these are the only results that you'll get: 0.125, 0.375, 0.625, and 0.875. And it tells you which rows to work. So your 8 rows might be work rows 7 and 8 first, and then rows 1 to 6. Mine is 1 to 8 to start with. Okay, I'll pop that away. I'll put the lights back on and we'll get started with row 1, which is a very simple row. So for row 1, we do our increases, knit to the marker, do our center increases, knit to the next marker, and do our last increase and border stitch. So I don't think I need to do this one on camera. We've done this row a lot. I'll pause the video and come back for row 2. So I've completed row 1, and now we move on to row 2, which is where we actually start doing the star stitch. Now in the updated pattern, I've also put the abbreviation for the star stitch on the same page. If you have an older version, it's also in the abbreviation section. Another thing to note is that if you find it hard to get the working needle into the 3 stitches, so not these 3, but I'll just show it as an example, you need to pick up all 3 stitches at once like that. Some knitting needles are very blunt at the tip, and it can be hard to get in through so many stitches. So if you find that is the case, what I recommend if you're using interchangeable needles is to go down a size on your working needle for this row. And you only have to change it when you finish this whole section. You can change it back. So this is a 5.5 millimeter. If I was having trouble, I would drop down to a 5 millimeter and see if that helped. If not, I'd go to a 4.5. I wouldn't go much lower than that. Okay, so let's see row 2. So we knit the first 3 stitches, which are our border stitches. Slip the marker I've brought the yarn to the front, and then we do a star. Now a star stitch is purl 3 together. So I go through 3 stitches purlwise, but I don't drop the stitches off the needle at this point. I do a yarn round the needle, so from the front to the back, around the needle, and then if your needle's across, come between the needles and purl those same 3 stitches again. Now see, I'm sort of struggling to get it at this angle. If I make my working needle more horizontal, it will go through easier. And purl them again. And so now I have 3 stitches on my working needle. I can drop the stitches there. So now I'm at the repeat for the row. I purl the next stitch and then I make a star. So I purl 3 together, but don't drop them off the needle yet. Wrap the yarn around the needle and purl those 3 stitches again. And now I can drop them off the needle. We repeat from the asterisk to the marker, so I purl 1 and then I purl 3 together. Wrap the yarn around the needle and purl those same 3 again before I slip them off the needle. Purl 1, purl 3 together. I find if you hold the needles more horizontal, it's easier to get the working needle through. So as if to purl, wrap the yarn around the needle and purl those same 3 stitches and drop it off the needle. Purl 1, purl 3 together. Don't drop them yet. Wrap the yarn around the needle and purl them together again. And now drop them off the needle. And I'm at my marker, which is where I should be. It says purl 1, star, repeat from the asterisk to the marker, which I've done. Slip the marker, purl the center stitch, slip the marker, and the second bracket say ditto, so we repeat the red brackets from before. So we start with a star, purl 3 together, wrap the yarn around the needle and purl them together again and remove from the needle. Purl 1, this is our repeat starting, purl 1, star. So purl 3 together, yarn round the needle and purl together again. And we repeat this to the next marker. Purl 1, purl 3 together, yarn round needle, purl the same 3 and drop off the needle. I'm at my marker, so now I slip the marker and knit the border stitches, the 3 border stitches. So it doesn't look much like a star yet on the front. It will take a few rows for it to appear. Row 3 is exactly the same as row 1, so it's just a straight, basically, apart from our increases, it's just a knit row. So I'll start this row, but I won't finish it on camera. 1, 2, 3, slip the marker, and now we do our garter left increase, so we still do the increases. And now I knit to the next marker, and you can see the star stitch bunched them into the groups of 3. They're sort of separated from the purl ones we did. So we just knit each stitch individually all the way to the next marker. I'll finish this off camera. So I've finished row 3. It still doesn't look very much like a star, or when it's finished, to me it reminds me more of a daisy than a star. It will take a few rows for it to come out, to become more prominent. Okay, so we finished row 3. Row 4 is similar to row 2. What I will do is I will do the first section correctly, and then in the second section I'll make some mistakes so that I can show you how to fix them. This is one pattern that you won't be able to fix on the other side. You'll unknit back to the mistake, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so at the start of the row we knit the border stitches, and this time we purl the first 3 stitches. And now we begin the row repeat. So from the aster we make a star and purl 1, and we repeat from the asterisk to 2 stitches before the next marker. Okay. So purl 3 together, yarn around the needle, purl the same 3 stitches together and remove. Purl 1, make a star, so purl 3 together, yarn around needle, purl 3 together. I'll come back when I've finished out the row. So I'm coming to the end of the second wedge. I've just made a star stitch, so I need to purl 1, and I should have 2 stitches before the marker, but I have 3. So that indicates to me that I've made a mistake somewhere in this row. So what I need to do, the only way to fix it is to undo the row until I find the mistake. So we unknit by picking up the loop that we just knit and dropping it off the needle. Now there's 2 ways that you can undo a purl 3 together, yarn over, purl 3 together. So what I like to do is I just drop it off my needle and I gently pull until I've got the first stitch and the yarn over out, You can pull up this first loop if you like to give yourself a bit more security. I don't usually bother. You can see that we have 3 loops here. So what I'm going to do is just scooch my needle up so I've got the 3 loops, and then I will undo that stitch. I'll do that again. So here I've got 3 loops here, so I drop it off the needle, gently pull, so the first stitch comes out, and then this was the yarn over. I'll pull it up and I'll separate a little bit. You can see I've got 1, 2, 3 strands. So this one was correct, there's no problem there. But I need to undo it because I'm going back to where the error was. Okay, so they've got the 3 stitches there. Undo the next stitch. I've got 3 stitches again. So I undo, pull that loop up, and this time I see that I've only got 2 stitches. So what I did was I did a purl 2 together, yarn round needle, purl 2 together, and that gave me, it looked like 3 stitches on the top, but it was actually only 2 stitches here. And now I can see another mistake I've made. So at the start of this row I should have purled 3, made a star, and then purled 1. But if I made a star, it would have 3 loops, and I've only got 1 loop there. So that indicates to me that I haven't done something right there. What have I got? So this time what I've done is just purl 3 together. I haven't actually done the yarn over and purl 3 together again. So this time what I'll do is I'll just come up underneath or through those 3 stitches. I don't have to undo that. I just do my yarn round the needle and purl 3 together again. Purl 1 and continue back across. So when I did the purl 3 together and then drop them off the needle, that's the easiest one to find, but the problem with it is that you won't know at the end of the row that you've actually done that, because you'll still have the correct stitch count. So here, and I've got 2 stitches left, which is what I should have. Slip the marker and knit the border stitches. Okay. And that's row 4 of our pattern. Starting to come together a little bit more now. So I won't finish out the rest of the pattern because they're basically just variations of rows 2 and 4, and every odd row is the same as row 1, which is basically a knit row. Now, what I would suggest, if you were directed to start the pattern somewhere other than row 1, what I would do, so say for example, I needed to start, I had 0.625 as my remainder after dividing the wedge count by 8, and it says to start at row 5, so work rows 5 to 8, then 1 to 4. So I'd put a little mark, whatever you want to put, maybe a circle or something like that, to know that you started there, and you would work rows 5, 6, 7 and 8, and then loop back around in 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's one complete pattern for you. For me, I started at row 1, so rows 1 through 8 would be my pattern row order. After we do one pattern row order, we need to do it again. So you work 16 rows in total for the star stitch pattern. So if you were starting at row 5, work rows 5 through 8, loop around rows 1 to 4, and then repeat that. Row 5 to 8, row 1 to 4, and then you finish the star stitch. And it's the same with each one. Wherever you're directed to start, you start there. And I like to put a mark, some sort of mark there. You can erase it later if you want to use the pattern again and make the shawl again, or make that section again. And that's it for the star stitch pattern. I'm going to insert a couple of pictures here of what the star stitch looks like once it's finished in the shawl, because this doesn't really look like a star just yet, and you might get a bit discouraged. So I'll just put a couple of pictures in closer up and at different angles to show you what the star stitch looks like. So that's it for the star stitch. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.